So guys, hey, basically today we're going to be doing another reaction video. I know, sometimes it gets fucking boring, but I made a video a couple of days ago called Sonic Movie 3 is Fundamentally Sonic. And another YouTuber made a video that's not in response to the video that I made, but actually released before my video came out that I didn't see. Basically, the video is called Sonic Movie 3 is Anti-Sonic, and I wanted to react to that today because obviously I made a video with a contrasting opinion, so me reacting to another video that makes opposite points to mine is a very good way to put my actual ideas to the test and put it somewhere where everyone can see. So, thank you for watching. Let's get into the video.
Discussion. Sonic Movie 3 is a instant classic, as many would describe it. I mean, it's made tons of money. Everyone loves it. Hardcore fans are pleased. General audiences are pleased. This is genuinely a very well-regarded and beloved film. So to suggest anything about its quality that's less than stellar could be considered blasphemy, and with how crazy this fandom is in regards to people who share negative opinions and don't praise every single new piece of Sonic media, I understand that going against the grain can be very dangerous and result in a lot of just toxic comments and bad faith arguments. However, I knew that if I didn't make this video, I would end up regretting it because there is just so much about this movie I want to say, and I decided that I'm just going to say it, and some people may agree, a lot of people may disagree, but
this is the beginning thesis point of this video, and I very much believe that is a very good starting point, letting people that you don't know ill will towards them. Until later in the video where he does actually mean ill will towards people, and it comes off as snobby as possible. But I wanted to say this very, very, very clearly. Do not harass this person. I like his content. I watch his content. I'll watch his content in the future. I'll watch his content in the past. Because at the end of the day, I just like watching other Sonic fans say things. That's just a thing that I like to do. So, if you see this guy, just say, hey, I disagree, but you're pretty cool. And that's it. So, now that we said that, I will be skipping up until he starts making arguments, which is a good 10 to 15 minutes into his analysis. As all of this is him prepping the audience and trying to make sure that they don't hate him by the end of the video. That's pretty much it.
this movie that I find so fascinating. On one hand, you could look at it as a kid's film, just a fun video game movie, completely divorced from its source material, and when you look at it like that, this is a really fun time. You got a tight-knit plot with great action, great spectacle, tons of charming humor, and great performances with tons of A-listers involved in this project. And truth be told, that's how most people are going to end up looking at this coming out of the theaters, because while Sonic the Hedgehog is a household name and one many people are familiar with, the actual hardcore side of the community is very niche. When I say hardcore, I mean people who have played most of the games, consumed most of the media, and have some idea on these characters and thematic elements attached to them.
Okay, let's be very clear here. He walked into this film with a fundamental misunderstanding of what Sonic they were appealing to or making a version of. They were fundamentally making a version of Western Sonic, and with this person being a Japaneseism elitist, he was never going to enjoy the film in the first place. And this will become very apparent as we get further into the video and actually do more analysis of the film. And that's pretty much it. There was no way he was going to like this film because the version, the interpretation of Sonic they were pulling from for Sonic's character and the story that they're pulling from the games are fundamentally two different things, and they changed it fundamentally to make it work. That was what they were going for, that was what they were doing, and if you disagree with that, well then, I don't know what to tell you, but they were fundamentally taking from American Sonic's characterizations, which are very strong, mind you. American Sonic's characterizations and like fucking Sonic Adventures 2 plot Merging those together is very much a really good idea, and I recommend that they do that for other Sonic stories if they adapt that, because most of American Sonic's characterization makes him feel a lot more human than Japanese Sonic, and Western Sonic writers very much suck at writing static characters. Like, there has not been a single one who's just been good at writing static characters. Like, even Ian Flynn had Sonic go through some sort of a character arc, which is fundamentally not supposed to be there. But anyway, let's continue with the video.
Interesting aspect of all of this is, with the first movie and the second movie, while yes, still not my cup of tea, I kind of just have a whatever stance on them. They didn't really bother me. I recognize that they have really nothing at all to do with the games that they're inspired by, but both of them, especially the first movie, aren't really trying to be. They're really just doing their own thing. And while I do not prefer that from a big budget Hollywood adaptation of my most beloved video game series, I can at least understand what they were going for. But then you have movie 3, where the writers, producers, and director Jeff Fowler repeatedly assured fans that this was going to be our film, that after this whole trilogy, they were going to bend over backwards to deliver a narrative that will satisfy both fans new and old. And a highlight of that is the specific game from which this movie is based on, Sonic Adventure 2.
Let's make this clear, okay? They have to appeal to 4 demographics when they're talking about appeal, when they're talking about appealing to both old, new, modern, and older fans. They have to appeal to new markets, they have to appeal to old markets, they have to appeal to Japanese markets, they have to appeal to Western market, right? So that means they have to group up ideals from 4 different versions of the franchise. And in fact, it's more than 4, it's more like 30 different versions of the franchise, and try to combine that together as much as possible. Now, while that does lead to some people, like this, not actually liking the movies, what it also leads to is that more people like the movies because the only things that they try to take are the things they think are worthwhile, like Sonic's characterization from Western media is completely different from the one from Japanese media. But the Western media version of the franchise is something they can write, and something that is very strong characterization-wise. Now they kinda dumb it down a little bit in this movie, and I might make a video talking about how they mess up in this regard a little bit, but if I am just staying here, he cannot fundamentally appreciate the movie because he doesn't understand what the movie is doing or what they're doing for the characterization, because he cut himself off from an entirely different part of the franchise that is also really valid.
Now, I could talk your ear off all day about how much I love SA2's narrative, how all of the characters naturally evolve from the previous game in a very satisfying and rewarding way, as well as the complex and nuanced themes of duality and purity versus artificiality. There's so much to unpack with this story. Now, it's not Shakespeare. It's not something that should be studied in writing classes. There's still a lot of convoluted aspects to the story, and it's clearly not taking itself seriously at times. But it still remains, without a doubt, the best Sonic story ever, with what it achieved and what it went for, and how iconic it remains till this day. So as you can expect, I was shitting my pants when I realized that the movies were going to directly be adapting SA2, because I knew they would fail. In the same continuity where none of these characters act the way they should, and niche aspects of the mythology such as GUN and Chief Pachydermech are treated as jokes, I knew that this third movie could not handle a story as complex and tightly woven as Sonic Adventure 2, and I was correct. But one thing I just really want to just make sure I get into your head, one thing I want you to know above all else, just so there's no bad faith or disingenuous stuff in the comments, which I know there will be, but just to try to at least soften that, I want to be completely honest with you and let you know that I managed my expectations. No, I was not expecting a one-to-one adaptation of Sonic Adventure 2.
Now, let's make this very, very, very clear here. He did not manage his expectations, because managing your expectations when it comes to Sonic media is a combination of multiple things. And I know I'm beating you over the head with this, beating you over the head with pretty much everything I say in this video, but it's a balancing act between Western and Japanese Sonic. That is what you're looking for. It's a balance between those two, and then you're bringing in the corporate entity known as fucking Paramount. The one thing that everybody universally agrees that they fucking hate. So you're bringing in two different versions of Sonic, and then you're bringing in a corporate entity, okay, who's going to dumb everything down. So like, those are the three things you have to manage your expectations for. This guy, he does not manage his expectations for it, or if he did, he didn't do it very well. And it's fundamentally because he was unable to understand that Western markets were going to take Western things and use the Western appeal of those markets in order to appeal to the Western. That was not a part of his fundamental understanding to dumbing down and understanding the film. That was not a thing that he did at all, and there was a fundamental failure on his part.
The first facet of this film that I want to talk about that is just nonstop on my mind and easily the thing that I care about the most are the characters. Now, Knuckles and Tails, despite being significant departures from their game counterparts, and in my opinion, to a detrimental extent, are reasonably fine in this story. They don't really do much or contribute much, but unlike everyone else here, they at least resemble aspects of what I liked about their original personalities, so I will give the movie credit there. No, what I really want to talk about is Sonic himself, or rather, Tonic, as I'm going to call him, because this guy is not Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't care how much these movies like to call him that. I don't care if people disagree with me or not. This is just not the character. And I know this is the part where a lot of people start whining and being upset, being, oh, dude, what? Sonic is open for interpretation. You can interpret the character any way you like. This is just a new modernized version of the character where we can see more of his humanity and see him grow up.
Now, let's be very clear here. People think Sonic's character is up for interpretation because they think coolness is up for interpretation. And they also think counterculture changes with time. So counterculture will always become different. So different interpretations of Sonic are supposed to appeal to what coolness is supposed to be at the time. Most people think that. Most people just don't actually say it. Like, if I tell a Sonic fan this is what I think, they'll agree or disagree depending on if they're a Japanese fan or not. Genuinely, that's just a thing that happened. If they're a Japanese Sonic fan, they think that everything should just be the same as it is in the 90s, which is okay. It's not. That's all I have to say. But like, if you're a Japanese Sonic fan, you're never going to find any other version of Sonic actually cool, because coolness doesn't change for you. Your coolness standard is based on where you grew up or what version of Sonic you were introduced to first. But most people think coolness is up for interpretation, so Sonic is going to change over time if they're trying to appeal to Western markets, which they are. So yeah, Sonic will be pretty much changing forever to fit whatever coolness is at the time.
Described as a folktale come to life. He is a mythical entity, so to speak, who really acts on his own self-interest, and those self-interests just so happen to be helping people whenever he sees someone in trouble and genuinely improving their lives and making them better by just being him. Sonic isn't what you would classify as a dynamic character. He is a static character, where the world doesn't change him, he changes the world in the people around him. He is the catalyst for the growth of all the other characters in the narrative. He's a force of nature. He is something that is not supposed to be recognizable or relatable. The only way you can possibly describe something like this is by saying what he is. Sonic. Sonic the Hedgehog. And that never changed in his country of origin. But you see, over here in the West, a lot of the localization differences depicted Sonic as a vastly different character. Everything that made him unique, everything that adhered to that original vision, was morphed and bastardized to make him more of a superhero-esque character and a lot more generic and streamlined. Now he was depicted as just any other character who just so happens to have superpowers, is really cocky and annoying, and makes constant jokes and quips, similar to another character that I can't help but draw comparisons to.
You see, this guy has decided to be fundamentally bad faith about who Western Sonic is, and throughout this video I'll be explaining more about Western Sonic, but like, fundamentally just comparing him to a different character and leaving the, like, comparison at that is very much a horrible thing and a horrible way to explain anything to anybody. You see, Spider-Man is not a unique character, Sonic isn't a unique character, so comparing them together fundamentally makes him ununique. But by the way, if we take the Japanese version of Sonic, Sonic isn't very unique either. I can compare him to things like fucking Dragon Ball and shit like that, but that's like surface level comparison that you can just look at and tell easily. I might like make a video just saying, hey, these are all the characters that Japanese Sonic acts like. He isn't very different from Western Sonic at all in the way that he copies from other people's personalities. It's just like you're being bad faith in a way that's like unreparable and makes everything poisoned for later in the video.
Now, here's the thing I want to highlight. Different interpretations of characters are completely valid. There have been many different iterations and variations of iconic characters like a bunch of superheroes you see, or even other entities and, early mythology and stuff like that. However, what makes an interpretation is when the author understands the original vision and adheres to that, but just does so in a different way.
You see, let's take that and just apply it to the Sonic in the movies. If we apply it to the Sonic in the movies, you can tell that the obvious interpretation that they're lifting the character traits from are either from the Archie comics or the early TV shows. Those were the only things they pulled from because they were 90s kids back then. Those were the only things that they liked really growing up when it came to Sonic, because most people, and mind you, if a thing does not have dialogue, it does not exist to them, right? Plot elements may happen, everything else may happen, but plot elements do not exist to you, especially when you're a kid, when it comes to talking about character. Alright, actions do not exist to you at that point unless the action is so absurdly cool that it sticks out in your mind like a sore thumb. So, when you say this, you have to realize that they have already two different interpretations of Sonic that branch out from each other, and then you have more things branching out from those two interpretations. This was never going to be your film. This was never going to be a film for you, because you fundamentally lack the ability to appreciate anything from American Sonic. And it's very easy to tell that. I don't know if I actually had to say that, but it is true nonetheless.
Now that we've seen an example of a good interpretation, I can properly explain why the Western side of Sonic is a bad interpretation. A lot of the surface level qualities are different, such as his design, his general attitude, stuff like that. However, the point of the original Sonic was that he was unrelatable. He was supposed to be mythical, almost godlike to a normal person. He is a static character that does not grow or undergo any significant change, but instead changes others. Like I said before, a folktale come to life. The American Sonic is anything but a folktale come to life. He is just an average teen with a cocky attitude and super speed. Do you understand the issue now?
I completely understand your problem here, but I don't think that's actually an issue. Giving somebody character traits isn't fundamentally a problem. If you make something cool, people will watch. If you make something that listens to the fans on some level, people will watch. Now, A fundamental issue here is your ability to understand or like the Western interpretation of Sonic. Now, is that a problem? No. But you knew, going into this, that mostly Westerners were making the product. So, when you have things that are Western coming in and making a Western Sonic product, why wouldn't you assume immediately just not to watch the entire franchise as a whole? Doesn't that make more sense than even going to watch the movie? Because you're not going to get your version of Sonic, you're going to get the version of Sonic that's popular in the West, which is Western Sonic. Now, Game Sonic is popular in the West too. I'm not saying that he's not, but most people know Sonic's Western elements because it's Western Sonic. So you were never going to be pleased by this film, and even watching the film on your part is bad faith because you fundamentally do not like Western Sonic. So it's immediately bad faith on your part.
It's one thing that he has a completely different personality. It's a whole nother when he doesn't even stand for what he originally stood for. The only thing that remains intact from his original vision is the design, and that's it. Oh, and I guess the power set. All of that was just a way of wrapping around to movie Sonic and why I despise this creature so much. This is not Sonic the Hedgehog, and this is not a valid interpretation of Sonic the Hedgehog, because once again, like many other Western interpretations, it completely misses the point of Sonic the Hedgehog. A lot of people will defend this interpretation by saying we are witnessing this character grow into his game counterpart. And you see, it's that right there. Growing up and becoming more mature and confident is a human and relatable quality. Relatability is the antithesis of this character.
Also, that argument isn't the only reason why it's bad, okay? It's also bad because you don't even know what character he's going to grow up to be, right? He might be similar to his game power counterpart in some ways, but in other ways be completely different, and you don't like it. So fundamentally, even making that argument in the first place is a bad argument because you can't prove that's what they're heading towards. For all you know, they're heading towards the Archie interpretation completely and utterly, and none of his game counterpart is going to be in there. He's going to be a snarky asshole. Okay? That's what we're heading towards, and you don't even realize it because you only care about like certain interpretations of the franchise. So, fundamentally, even making that argument is bad. But also, you have to understand that Sonic growing into a character or growing into a different interpretation of a character is fundamentally not flawed. Now, he just went on like a diatribe talking about how Sonic is like a folktale and shit. Now, while that may be true, it's also true that if you can make it work and have Sonic have character growth, you can make it work and have Sonic have character growth. Not every version of Sonic has to be a static character. And mind you, every version of Sonic being a static character lacks variety. How would you change Sonic and make him unique if he needs to be all these things and a static character, right? So basically, Sonic can't grow into his form, he can't change into his form, but he has to stay the same. So I understand that people will be like, okay, let's put him in different situations, but like, you can just do that in the games. You can literally just put him in those situations in the same continuity. There's no value in ever having a different interpretation of Sonic, because no matter what, you can just have the story head off in the direction for that thing to happen, and then have Sonic eventually make it come to an end. And mind you, Sonic is a character that does not have a like definitive beginning to end timeline. We don't even know within the Sonic timeline how long these stories are actually taking to happen. And mind you, while I'm saying this, we might get like a fucking book out there telling us, oh, this is the order of events, but we don't know how old Sonic's gonna get before he dies. We don't know that. For all we know, Sonic is literally an immortal being who will exist till the ending of time, just like Shadow. But Sonic was born naturally, so it doesn't like affect him or anything. So like, we don't know that much about where Sonic's going to be starting from to the point where he ends. All we know is the middle section of his timeline. So like, almost all these arguments are fundamentally flawed, but also the arguments that people are making in response are fundamentally flawed too. So there's nothing for me to say here except holy heck shit.
Sonic is never someone who grows up. In fact, if you ask Naoto Oshima, his co-creator, he doubts Sonic was even ever naturally born. Which may sound crazy to people who don't understand this character, but it's just a very natural explanation because this isn't someone who just gets conceived one day and grows up. Sonic Gaiden, his original origin story, heavily implies that he's more so a physical manifestation of goodness, a spiritual creature. And the fact that Western writers do not understand this is why this character gets grossly misinterpreted time and time and time and time and time again.
Sonic has Japanese roots, Sonic has American roots, okay? But fundamentally, you have to understand that if Sonic has these American roots, you have to take these versions of Sonic on their own terms, except for Sonic Prime. They wanted that shit to be canon. That is not the game Sonic, so like, I completely understand your argument there. Like, if it's like a different interpretation or from a different reality, you have to take it from the terms of what American Sonic came from. You have to take it from those terms, and not taking it from those terms is fundamentally bad faith. It is bad faith on its lonesome. Even if you would say you're coming at this from a good faith perspective, this is a bad faith video, fundamentally because you can't take it from the roots of American Sonic, which fundamentally makes your video unable to be a fair or good video because you don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to have Sonic and American Sonic divorced from each other in your mind. Now, this guy could be a person who does the thing, that meme, or like that common story trope where this town isn't big enough for the both of us, but the town is big enough for the both of them, and Japanese Sonic isn't popular in Japanese areas, and Western Sonic isn't popular in Western Sonic is popular in Western areas. So, yeah, I don't know what to say.
And while I'm on the subject, I do want to bring up how this fandom has a real xenophobia problem. And people are going to say I'm jumping the shark, but trust me, I've seen it happen so many times.
I would not call it xenophobia. I would not call it xenophobia. Calling it xenophobia is fundamentally misinterpreting their intentions, right? You can't have a person grow up with a version of Sonic, tell them that the version of Sonic they grew up with is not the original interpretation or not even a good interpretation, and expect them to take that wholeheartedly, take that faithfully, and take that as you acting in good faith towards their, like, whatever they believe Sonic is, right? So you can't fundamentally call Western Sonic not Sonic, tell somebody that, and the person who grew up with Western Sonic, and expect them to be like, oh, Japanese Sonic is where it comes from, but Western Sonic, to me, is cooler, right? Fundamentally, you are the person sitting here telling people that they can't enjoy their version of Sonic. And fundamentally, by not calling movie Sonic Sonic, is fundamentally you saying you're not enjoying Sonic. You are not enjoying Sonic the correct way that I want you to. Therefore, you are not enjoying Sonic, you're enjoying not Sonic. So fundamentally, you can't enjoy this version of Sonic because he's not Sonic.
Completely dismissing Japanese culture and their narrative sensibilities in favor of a westernized depiction of this character, even resulting to xenophobic slurs to get their point across. As a proud American myself, I can say that one of the everlasting qualities of this country is taking things that do not belong to us and making it a part of us. Cultural appropriation. This has happened to a lot of different series, and Sonic the Hedgehog is probably the biggest example of this. And now many people are going to clap back by saying, well, Sonic was made to appeal in the West, when a lot of statements from creators will directly contradict this, stating that he was made to appeal in both the West and in his home country of origin.
So I was going to be like, should I be dissecting this entire sentence just to prove him wrong? Or should I just like not do that? Because like the end result of me trying to prove him wrong by using statements is ultimately some random asshole coming out of nowhere just to say that like the Japanese writers don't understand English, and I would immediately become the most livid person of all time if somebody did that. So I'm not going to spend time dissecting this entire sentence to explain why being accepted somewhere and being made for something are two different things, right? I don't have to explain that. Anyway, I'm gonna move on now because that was so fucking stupid.
Now, many people grew up with this version of the character, and it is completely valid to like or even prefer this version of the character. I don't want to take that away from anyone. I'm not saying it's wrong to enjoy this or any of the projects that involve this depiction of Sonic the Hedgehog.
This entire video is about how it's not Sonic the Hedgehog. So, if you enjoy this version of Sonic the Hedgehog, fundamentally you are not enjoying Sonic the Hedgehog because this character is not Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, no true Scotsman or whatever. That's not actually what the term is called or whatever, but like fundamentally what he's saying is that enjoying this version of Sonic the Hedgehog means you just do not like Sonic the Hedgehog because it's not Sonic the Hedgehog. Does that make any sense? Hopefully this has made sense so far.
However, it is important to understand that this is not what the character is supposed to be, nor was he ever supposed to be. And the last thing I will say about this topic that will anger many people, but I don't give a shit because it's so honest and just blatant, is that a lot of people will not want to admit it, but they do not like Sonic's character. I have seen many people say, oh, well, a character that doesn't change or undergo any meaningful growth is so boring. Someone who is just completely OP and isn't relatable and has no real flaws is such a bad way to write a character.
Okay, so basically, this is true that Sonic being a static character is not a bad thing. Goku in the Z portions of Dragon Ball is not a dynamic character, if we're being honest with ourselves. He's more of a static character. The difference between Goku when it comes to America and why he hasn't changed all that much, and even when they brought in the Japanese version of the character as the only version of the character, nothing really changed for people, and why the fundamental thing of Sonic being Western and stuff is that what Sonic wants to do doesn't really work for Americans unless he has dynamic character growth, right? Goku wants to fight people and become the strongest. Everybody looks at that and they go like, holy shit, it's cool, it's amazing, right? Sonic is already the fastest, right? He's not like working to constantly become the fastest, he is the fastest, right? So like when you have a static character with no real goals that they're working towards, a lot of Americans see that as really cringe, which it's not, by the way. It's really not cringe. In fact, most things in Sonic are just like the least cringe thing in the world, and people only thought it was cringe because it's Sonic, but you already know that, so I don't really have to keep repeating myself on that. But what you have to understand is that Americans are very, very, very war focused and shit like that, unless they are literally just get scared out of it by the fact that they're losing or something. Americans will always watch Goku over Sonic because Goku just does something that the Americans want to do all the time, which is just war with countries and fucking disassemble world orders of different magnitudes and shit, which is crazy, I know, but Goku's fundamentally American by nature because America values stuff like that, especially violence, okay? Jesus Christ.
Well, I'm sorry. I have news for you. You do not like Sonic as a character because no matter what your opinion is, no matter what you prefer, the original vision will never go away. What Naoto Oshima and Yuji Naka intended will never go away.
While this is fundamentally true, let me go ahead and just say we should make Batman kill people again. That would be very, very funny. I think that would be the funniest thing of all time. Piss off everybody, make Batman kill again. I think it would be amazing.
And I think that should be preserved and not disregarded or dismissed, especially when it comes to a giant Hollywood production where most of the general audience's perceptions of these characters will be drawn from.
Okay, let's be very clear here. Nothing from Japanese Sonic should be totally forgotten, but you have to, like, very much consider the fact American Sonic just won the culture. That's what happened. American Sonic won the culture, just like phasing out Batman killing people won over the culture. Like, things that aren't the original creator's original vision gets phased out or gets phased into a different dimension or something, never to be seen again. We know this happens, we know it's the case sometimes. Sometimes things have to be phased out for things to become more popular, and whether this has to be phased out for Sonic to become more popular is to be seen. But as we see it right now, it might actually be the case that we might have to phase out the idea of Sonic being a static character for him to become more popular. Just like they phased out Batman killing people.
And there's one thing that I really want to talk that pisses me off, and that is before the third act, where Tom gets injured because he gets mistaken to be Commander Walters by Shadow, and his fate is left ambiguous, and Sonic, completely enraged at this point, goes against his friend's trust, is prepared to fight Knuckles should he get in his way, and uses the Master Emerald to turn super to go and kill somebody. Keep in mind, by the way, that the whole point of a super transformation in the games is supposed to be a physical manifestation of a character's completed arc. It's supposed to be more than just a narrative device. It is also a thematic device.
He didn't watch the film, bro. You can't tell me you watched the film and tell me that that wasn't a thematic device. It literally just represents all of Sonic's anger being preserved into one place when he goes out to fucking murk Shadow. It isn't just a narrative device, it is a thematic device to represent the breaking point of Sonic's character. You either didn't watch the film or you didn't care to mention that because you're being bad faith.
That should directly correlate and reinforce the positive message that the story is going for. So let me recap here. A character that is supposed to be incorruptible and the person who inspires positive change in the people around him goes against his two trusted allies and turns super, not as a physical accumulation of everything he learned, but as in a way to extract vengeance on somebody.
Yeah, I don't think you understood. Okay. Dude, him turning super in that moment is a fundamental manifestation of the fact that Shadow and Sonic do not understand the message, right? No matter how many times Sonic tells Shadow about the message, Shadow keeps saying that Sonic doesn't understand the message. And then when he gets hurt, Sonic doesn't understand the message. Like, it's a fundamental subversion of what you expect from the super form, right? And that's what makes it really cool to me. Now, a lot of people don't actually understand that and just, like, see it from how this guy sees it. I know his name. I'm trying not to get this guy harassed, just in case a lot of people see this video. Okay, I'm just trying not to get people harassed, okay?
This is the most anti-Sonic thing I've ever seen, and it's crazy to me. Now, of course, the film doesn't glorify this. This is supposed to be the character making a wrong decision and grossly misusing the purity of the emeralds. I understand that's the point the movie is trying to make, but A, Sonic is the last character you want to make this point with, and B, it completely goes against what a super transformation is supposed to symbolize. This was without a doubt my least favorite part of the whole thing, and I hate it. I genuinely hate it.
So, are we saying that he should have only used the negative side of the Chaos Emeralds, which would have been fundamentally amazing? If that's what you're saying, that Sonic should have only used the negative energy of the Chaos Emeralds and turned into like Dark Sonic, I would just outright just agree with you. But I don't think that's what you're saying. I think you're basically fundamentally saying that they shouldn't have used the emeralds in the first place because Sonic wasn't using his purity, wasn't being pure and uncorruptible. But, you know, I'm going to just like stick with my own headcanon here. And then just pretend like that's what you're saying and just agree with you. Actually, I didn't even do that in the previous part, never mind.
Now, let's talk about Shadow. Shadow is a very interesting case because recently the character has had a comeback. In Prime, he was depicted very well. And Shadow Generations, Dark Beginnings, and the actual game, he is depicted insanely well. And in movie 3, his general personality is great. He's a dark character with a dark past who, deep down, is a good person. And a lot of forgotten aspects about the character, such as his general arrogance and playful taunts to his enemies, is brought back for this film. I was genuinely surprised by how well they nailed his personality. But with this being the Sonic movies, of course, nothing can just be all the way good. They had to take away something. They had to ruin something. And that is just his entire origin. Where do I start? Okay. As most of you know, in the games, Shadow was an artificial life form created by Gerald Robotnik as a way of finding the means to immortality. Gerald wasn't trying to find immortality out of self-gain, but for a very selfless and human reason.
One, he was not trying to find immortality. He was trying to use him as a power source for the government. For gun, G-U-N, right? They don't even bring up the idea of immortality in the movie itself, but in a deleted scene. So, unless you were looking at the deleted scenes, you shouldn't even have this information. And two, if Maria's not sick, most of SA2, the original version, does not happen. If Maria is not sick, well, actually, that is not the case, because Maria being sick in the original version of SA2 didn't actually factor into that story. So we're going to continue going, because holy shit.
To cure his terminally ill granddaughter, who is on death's door. And on board the Space Colony Ark, a space station in which this child was stored completely away from her home planet in order for the low gravity to decrease her deterioration, ends up befriending Shadow, and these two grew insanely close, often wondering what Earth would be like should they ever visit it one day, and dreaming of a brighter future in which they can actually coexist on what looks to be a beautiful planet. Only for that future, that fairy tale, to be brutally destroyed when GUN raid the Space Colony Ark, deeming Shadow to be too dangerous, killing every single researcher involved with the exception of Gerald, and shooting Maria dead after she sacrifices herself to ensure Shadow has a better future and gets to live the life that she was cursed to not live. A genuinely tear-jerking and awful tragedy. You have Shadow, who was created for the one purpose of curing his closest friend, unable to even do that. His future, everything he dreamed with her, is just completely gone, and all he has left is vengeance and an undying hatred for the people that took her from him. And that tragedy extends well beyond him and goes directly to Gerald as well. This very well-intentioned and well-meaning person who did very questionably immoral things for a very good, benevolent cause. Now, what if I were to tell you that the overwhelming majority of all of that is completely missing in this film? Shadow is not an artificial life form, he just crash landed on Earth. Maria is not terminally ill, she is just a random girl who has always lived on Earth and just hangs with Shadow on occasion.
Where is your proof that they only hanged out occasionally? There is no proof that they only hanged out occasionally, okay? In fact, it's implied by the fact that she was bringing all of her stuff in, that she was moving in, or was ending her move in, into the military base that Gerald was working at, implying also that he lived in the military base as well. So it might be the full and utter case that Maria lived on the base, but we have no actual proof on that, and the fact that you took the time to come up with the idea that they only did things occasionally, there's no proof, and there's no way for you to know that until we have more actual, like, evidence to the contrary. But this is also a bad faith thing that you did in this video, because fundamentally, occasionally could not be the case, and also Maria was the only child who was in the military base. So fundamentally, Maria is, well, there, and Maria is by herself. So you have no proof for any of this. You have no proof for any of this.
Gerald is not desperately seeking what seems to be an impossible cure to save the life of his beloved granddaughter. He is just a random scientist who has an interest in this random alien life form and decides to study him. Shadow and Maria are just two friends who stumbled upon each other. One day she died and he got locked away. All of the complexity, all of the tragedy of that original story is completely gone. The only thing that is remained intact is the friendship and the theft. The entire relationship of Shadow and Maria becomes nothing more than a narrative device.
Yeah, the fact that there's no narrative complexity is the point. It was just a relationship that happened by circumstance. Basically, there is nothing there holding Maria and Shadow together at all. There is no reason for Maria to like Shadow. There's no reason for Maria and Shadow to even be acquainted with each other, or to know each other, or to care about each other at all. But the purity of this little girl was enough to pull Shadow out of his shell, and enough for Maria to literally just befriend the creature on his own, because Maria is just that pure. There could be nothing holding them together, and Maria would still care. Which, you know, if you're actually like a person who cares about shit like the multiverse, this answers like a question for you about Maria. But most people don't actually see the importance of stuff like the multiverse and think it should go away. So I'm gonna leave that right here.
As opposed to how special it was originally. I do have to give props, however. The movie does do a good job of portraying how charming and lively these two's friendship and care for each other was, making it hit more when you do see Maria die. This is a character that rarely got any screen time in a lot of the earlier stories. She was mainly just a painful memory, not necessarily an actual fully fleshed out character. So seeing a different side of that and seeing it more fleshed out was cool and was unique. But that is unfortunately all the praise I can deliver, because there's just really not a lot of substance here. And what's crazy to me is that they just cut it all out. It's situations like these where I like to look back on the director saying how much he did his research and how excited he was to tell a story that paid tribute to SA2. And I just think about shit like this where they just completely alter this character's tragic backstory for no reason. They just make it significantly less impactful and less interesting.
Like, he fundamentally does not understand the point of the movie. He doesn't understand what it's trying to say about the original characters, and he doesn't understand anything about, pretty much anything about this film or about the series in general, and just says shit, you know? Now, I'm not saying he doesn't know anything about the series as in this. I'm talking about the movie part of the franchise. That's what I'm talking about. I don't want to say that this man doesn't know anything about the Sonic franchise, because I've been watching his videos for a while. I think he knows a lot about the franchise, but like what the movies are fundamentally trying to do and trying to show you about these characters is fundamentally different. Now, I'm pretty sure this guy's like immediate response is, yeah, they're gonna do it worse. But what does that do? What value is there in just saying that something's worse, you know? I don't know, man. I don't know.
And I cannot for the life of me understand why. Like, I just, all of the ingredients are there and they just don't use them. But of course, Shadow is the last character that this negatively impacts. Easily the most insulting thing about this entire disaster of an adaptation is Gerald Robotnik. What in the fuck did they do to him? You see, Gerald is perfect. I'm so glad he exists. I'm so glad this is a character because I have a perfect reference that completely and without fail represents everything I hate about these movies.
Before we get into this part, let me say this, okay? If we only use the look, okay, let's be very clear here, okay? They aren't taking from the character's entire encyclopedia. They would only be taking from the character's interpretation in that part of the franchise, okay? Let's be very clear about that. Because I see a lot of people out there saying that they're like looking at the entire franchise, which is just not the case. They are just looking fundamentally at the first version of that character and going like, okay, this is what this is supposed to be. Which is why Sonic is so different. Which is why Tails and Knuckles are so different. Which is why Gerald Robotnik is so different than how he looks in every other adaptation. Because they're only taking the first appearances and extrapolating off of that. They aren't taking like what the creators wrote down. They aren't taking like what the anything has to do with that character's like creation from a standpoint, but they are taking just like the surface level things that they see within the story, or seeing the character traits that they see within the story, which Sonic 1 and Sonic 3 really don't have any, but you know, that's just you. That's just me.
They took a character, Gerald Robotnik, one of the most fascinating and nuanced and morally gray characters in the series. Like I mentioned earlier, a very human and understanding and sympathetic character who completely declined insanity the more he tried to save his granddaughter's life, and completely went off the edge once she was taken from him, to the point of exacting vengeance on the entirety of humanity, a completely unforgivable and evil act committed by someone who had the best and most selfless intentions at the start of his journey. They took that character, and I kid you not, without any exaggeration, just made him Eggman 2. Scratch that, movie Eggman 2, because to call this character anything like how Eggman's supposed to be, I'll get to that later. This is not a morally nuanced individual. Robotnik in this film is a complete jackass.
This is another part where he doesn't pay attention. I'm gonna have to actually play the clip here to actually show what Gerald Robotnik says right before Maria dies, because most people miss this. Most people actually miss this.
They want to take Shadow away from us, Maria.
He's only taking Shadow because Maria loves him so much. Now, I don't know why he says us. It could imply that Gerald and Shadow have a connection, but they didn't show that in the movie. So all we can go off of is based on the fact that Gerald loves Maria and the fact that Maria loves Shadow. So yeah, if Maria is going to be happy as possible, well then Gerald's gonna probably steal the ultimate life form for Maria if he genuinely cares about Maria, which he seems to have done, because as soon as she dies he becomes insane. And there's no proof beforehand that he was insane before. So yeah, they might expand on this in like a different movie, like a Shadow the Hedgehog movie or something. But like other than that, like there's no way you can say that like Shadow the Hedgehog or anything like that isn't like showing humanity, because he quite literally is. He just literally is. I don't know how you missed this in the movie.
Is cartoonishly evil, and it's never made a point that after the death of Maria it spiraled him into madness. No, that aspect of him is never elaborated on. In fact, the film implies multiple times that he's always acted like this.
There is no proof. I don't even think we see too many scenes of Gerald interacting with Shadow and Maria, because that isn't the point of the film. the point of the film is Shadow's connection to Maria, so they aren't going to spend a lot of time focusing on the fact that, like, you know, Gerald and Shadow have a relationship. I wish they did, but they didn't. So, working with what we have in the film, there's no implication that Gerald was this way the entire time, and you have no proof to back up your point.
Completely taking away all sympathy and all complexity from this character. He is a misogynist. He compliments his grandson when he nearly gets him killed because of how ruthless and evil and unempathetic he is. And he shares the exact same mannerisms and the exact same man-childness as his grandson.
Gerald is literally a guy on a suicide mission because his goddamn granddaughter died. He's not, like, in the right state of mind, for one. Two, his connection to Eggman doesn't even matter in this film because his only connection to Eggman does not have any value to Gerald himself. So he's going to be trying to do things to get on Eggman's good side, and Eggman, well, he views himself as pretty evil. So, like, of course, Gerald is going to be saying some weird evil stuff to try to get on Eggman's good side. There is no proof in the flashbacks that Gerald is, like, anything other than what he is now. But, like, by same metric, you can't prove that Gerald was always this way. You know? It's simultaneously a thing where you can prove simultaneously neither and both things through this method, and you gain nothing or lose nothing. So, like, there was no value in this section to begin with. But also, I'd like to add the simple fact of, it's that they're only taking from SA2. This isn't like a thing where they're looking at his entire history and then looking back, right? The only people who do that is the actors. When the directors look at something, they're only looking at the story they're directly adapting. So Gerald isn't going to have his, like, extra layers or anything up until later when they actually read those parts of the story, which is a failing on the director's part, but they're only trying to stay as close to SA2 as possible while adding little hints of Shadow the Hedgehog, which implies that they aren't even going to adapt Shadow the Hedgehog, which has all of his layers incorporated into it. So without adapting Shadow the Hedgehog, they're only going off the story based on the SA2, unless they decided to adapt Shadow the Hedgehog later, which makes this point invalid. But if they don't plan on adapting Shadow the Hedgehog, well then, they're only going to be using the things directly in the story of SA2. Not like side material, not like things like on the periphery, only what's in SA2.
Even down to the design of their suits, this is by all means supposed to be just but old. And you see, you may wonder why they did this, and the common person will tell you, well, they just wanted a new interpretation of the character. And then I'll ask you, well, why did they want a interpretation of the character? The original one worked so well and was so much, so why would they dumb him down and make a second Eggman?
So I'm going to be very clear here. I'm going to be skipping this section, not because it's not like a problem or anything. Like, it very much is a problem that people literally come up with the worst arguments possible and then put those up as a reason why things happen. No, okay, we're just gonna skip that because I didn't make that argument.
Nothing special, just a tool to get what he wants. And that realization, that epiphany, not only makes him see the value in Ancient Stone, the one person who's ever appreciated him in his entire life, but it drives him to kind of, in a sense, atone for his life of misdeeds by sacrificing himself to save the Earth. A planet full of people he previously despised and spent his entire life stepping down on, he gives up everything to save.
Okay, that sure is an interpretation, but like, dude, that is not what's going on in that scene. If he survives, he can continue being evil. If he doesn't survive, well then your interpretation will be correct. Like this is like a very genius thing for them to do, because if he if he doesn't come back, everybody just believes Eggman turned good at the end. If he does come back, everybody who believes Eggman was still evil will still get everything they want from Eggman. But like, oh my god, it's so smart, it's ingenious, because they single-handedly like used Eggman's character in such a brilliant way to make it believe that like literally this man has turned a new leaf, when his only goal was to save that one person on the planet and say, oh yeah, fuck everybody else though. But everybody's just like sitting there like, man, he really did become a good guy at the end. I really want them to use like this like really stark meta commentary about how everybody thought that Eggman turned into a good guy at the end of the movie, and like turn it on its head in some way, shape, or form, and just have him be a good guy for like the first half of the movie, and then just have him go like, you really thought I became a good guy, and just like kick Sonic down like a rift or something, and like have everything explode around Sonic because he believed Eggman was a good guy, because there was no way that you could have believed Eggman became a good guy based on how that last scene went. There was no way. What is going on here?
Just to talk about the theme of this film, which on paper is a great theme that correlates with Shadow's feature film debut. A message about how people aren't evil by nature, but rather by nurture, by their environment, by the tragedy that can occur in their lives, and how it's important to not let that tragedy define who you are. How you can rise above your forsaken past and strive towards a brighter future and fight to be a better person. Good message, good theme. It's a shame that it is horrifically executed. Actually, horrifically executed is rather harsh, but what I mean by just a faulty execution is the fact that these characters, and I'm talking about Tom, Sonic, and especially Shadow, how these three characters will practically stop what they're doing, turn to the audience, and exposit every single aspect about the theme and how it is unfolding at this very moment. How you have Super Sonic and Super Shadow fighting each other, and you have Shadow talking about, you see, you've let anger drive you away from your friends. You've let revengeance misguide you into becoming something you're not. Like me. Like, it's just, this film thinks its audience is just fucking stupid and will constantly stop what it's doing to spell out in clear words everything that it's trying to achieve narratively.
I really like how they changed SA2's theme of duality and used it instead to talk about revenge. I really, really like that. And this guy's fundamental misunderstanding of what the scene is supposed to represent is that Sonic's like immediate thing towards what Tom says doesn't really work if Shadow doesn't say what he says beforehand. Like, he has the ability to kill Shadow in that moment. Shadow's begging for Sonic to kill him, and Sonic is simultaneously just thinking about the entire encounter, and he comes to the conclusion that he probably shouldn't do it. Now, you may say it's on the nose, but they use that on the nose dialogue to propel the pettiness of Shadow and make his character seem a little bit more menacing and a bit more like an asshole, like he does seem in SA2. If you're actually paying attention to the movie and you actually care about what's going on, which this guy didn't.
And when Super Sonic spares Super Shadow, you just have them both talking about, vengeance is a very bad thing. It's a good thing that, we can be better than that and rise above that. And it's just like, I understand this is a kid's movie, but you see, contrary to what Hollywood believes, kids aren't stupid. You can have subtext and things intended for kids. How do I know that? Man, it's almost like the games these films are inspired by are some of the most narratively rich pieces of media that I've ever invested my time in.
Oh my god, people are like using like subtext and shit. People like this will literally say characters should just do actions without talking. Is that a bad faith reading? I'm not sure, but it really feels like that's what he's saying. Like Sonic and Shadow should have like shit talked Sonic without bringing up the theme at all. Sonic should have punched him all the way to space. Sonic is about to kill the guy. He has like no thinking about what Tom says. He just lets go, and like Shadow just sits there for a couple of minutes thinking about his life, and then they fly off to space. That's what I feel like he's saying. If I'm wrong, please correct me and please help me understand, because I hope I'm not being bad faith when I say this, but like that scene doesn't make any sense without dialogue. Now I want him to like rewrite the scene or something, like just rewrite those exact events happening in that exact same way, but change the dialogue to make the main text subtext. I want him to do that because they set up all those parts of the film are set up previously for them to use later. So he has to keep all those things up and like remove all the like main text, make it subtext, and replace the dialogue. That's what I would love to see from him.
But now that we've talked about the characters, now that we've talked about the message, I want to talk about something that I really want to dive into. And you see, this is going to be the hardest part of this video to discuss because I have to say what's on my mind without coming off as condescending. Because like I discussed, or at least like I hope I've conveyed, it's completely okay to enjoy this movie and films like it. I understand the charm, I understand the appeal. But I am just... I find it so insane with how much key jangling is in this movie and how much it gets away with it. Like I've already expressed, I think this is such a poor adaptation of SA2 by every metric. Gerald Robotnik is completely bastardized. The entire tragedy of Shadow and Maria is completely bastardized. There's no bio-lizard to have a narrative contrast between what Shadow could have been and what he is now. His entire sacrifice is usurped by another character's sacrifice. The characters do not act like the characters. And pretty much every single theme present in the original game is nowhere to be seen. I could go on and on and on and on about how this sucks as an adaptation, and like I said, I expected it to suck as an adaptation. But I just can't get over how these movies, like this is just a Sonic movie trilogy problem, how they'll just leave these breadcrumbs and Sonic fans will freak the fuck out with these breadcrumbs. For example, when Sonic repeats the iconic "No food or movies, we're out of here" quote and jumps out of the gun helicopter, you can hear tidbits of Cityscape incorporated into the film's orchestral soundtrack. And I see so many people being like, oh my god, they're using video game music, hooray! And it's just like, you can barely fucking hear it.
I fundamentally agree with this, exactly agree with this part. He'll talk about Live and Learn later, and he'll say the most retarded thing about it. But like, dude, I just agree. There's nothing. You shouldn't be happy that like a thing from the games is in there because it has no narrative purpose, right? I want everything to be in the movie to have a narrative purpose unless it's like loud and proud about it, which these movies aren't. They aren't loud and proud about the music that they're using unless they're using it for thematic purposes, which they do for Live and Learn. So like every other track that they use in there, I'm just not interested in hearing. I don't care about it because it's not like, it doesn't have any thematic purpose, and they use it so sparingly that it gives me an aneurysm every time they use it.
Like, I kid you, like, I know I might sound crazy here. Why couldn't they just play Cityscape? Or why couldn't they have a orchestral rendition of it that fits the film's vibe? Why can I barely hear it? All the duality between Sonic and Shadow and what made the rivalry so special in the original game is completely absent and not remarked on at all here. In fact, it's never even explained why the two look so identical. But hey guys, there's a 1-minute scene where they comment on the similarities. Oh my god! Yo, that reminds me of that one scene in SA2 where they are framed similarly, also saying the same thing.
Why do Shadow and Sonic look similar? I think I missed that point in the original SA2, Like, I think I really did miss that point. If we're talking about like the mural theory, or he didn't explain it like properly what he meant, but like if he's just talking about the mural theory, that's not proven and they don't use it. And I'm pretty sure people who work on the Sonic games are like quite literally just against the idea of ever confirming that in any way whatsoever. So that was never going to get confirmed in the first place unless like literally Paramount is doing their own thing completely, which I don't think they are, but a lot of people think they are. It's crazy if you actually think they are though, but that's besides the point. I don't know what he means here. If I knew what he meant here, I'd probably fight it back against it a little bit more, but I don't know what he means here.
Oh my god, guys, they did it. They used Live and Learn. For the first time in forever, we actually get to see Live and Learn be played on the big screen. We only hear 50 seconds of it, and it's immediately intercutted by more Jim Carrey hijinkses. But hey guys, it was in the film. We got to see it in the film.
The only reason why it literally cuts off when he goes off screen is because literally it's Shadow's leitmotif being played out. That theme being played is a symbolization of Shadow's character arc pretty much ending. That is what it is about. That is what it's about. There is no value of leaving it on screen while Gerald and Robotnik are on screen unless like Shadow and Sonic destroy everything like off screen and just enter in while like fucking Gerald and Robotnik are fighting, which didn't happen. It's literally Shadow's leitmotif. You can't make a criticism of this part of the film and not like talk about like Live and Learn being Shadow's leitmotif. That's literally the whole point of the thing in the movie, is that it's Shadow's leitmotif. Oh my god.
It doesn't matter if we barely got to hear it. It was just in the film for a little bit, guys. Oh. Guys, we got the Space Colony arc. Oh my god. And it destroyed the moon. It destroyed the moon. You know, that scene in SA2, one of the most iconic scenes in the entire series, where Eggman practically makes the entire world and all neighboring governments his bitch and destroys the moon as a sheer demonstration of his power. And it's a complete turning point in the story where the stakes are higher than ever before and the tone drastically shifts. Well, in the movie, they accidentally sliced it in half. It's not a power move by Eggman. You don't see people reacting to it in horror. It's not a shift in the story. But guys, it's like that thing that also happened in the games.
Wait, so you are going to... Wait. So we're making the case that Gerald Robotnik was going to let Ivo Robotnik blow up the Earth to scare humanity when his goal is to blow it up? Like, what are you trying to do? Are we trying to, like... Oh, Gerald's so fucked up that he could have, like, just, like, blown up the moon just to be funny. Or whatever. No, what? No, that would be out of character for Gerald. Gerald would immediately try to blow up the planet. That's what would happen. Gerald would immediately try to blow up the planet, and Ivo would try to stop him. That's what happened in the movie. That's what makes the most narrative sense. They call back to it because it wouldn't make sense for the story for Ivo Robotnik to literally waste, like, Shadow's energy to blow up the moon. It literally just doesn't make any sense. And the fact that anybody would complain about that is fucking stupid.
So isn't that cool that they referenced that? We got to see the moon get destroyed, guys. Oh my god, peak fiction. We're actually so back. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, it's just the amount of fanfare that these movies will have is what they'll usually do is they'll usually incorporate something from the game, something very small, and it will do so without understanding why that thing was so special and why people loved it and why people wanted to see it. But Sonic fans, with their infinitely low standards, will freak the fuck out seeing it. It doesn't matter if the Master Emerald serves an entirely different function than what it was supposed to serve. It's there in movie 2. It doesn't matter if they practically make Iblis and the Flames of Disaster a complete joke in the Knuckles series. It's there. It was referenced. It doesn't matter if Team Sonic are adoptive brothers in this new continuity, which is completely fucking stupid, and they have a completely different dynamic than what's seen in the games. Guys, It's still Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles working together. It's Team Sonic on the big screen.
I like the characters, but I don't like the character dynamics. Let's make that very clear. I do not like the character dynamics. Like, if they interacted with each other in different ways, I'd be a lot more happy with the characters. But fundamentally, like, these characters are different than the original interpretations, and for most fans, they like exactly this kind of dynamic and think that the characters should interact this way in the goddamn games. Like, ask any Sonic fan that who is like tapped into these movies or likes things about these movies, they will literally say that they like the dynamic between Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles the most in this film. They literally will say that. And to me, I'm just like, oh my god, something's going wrong here. And he'll say something is going wrong here, but he's like, everything about this movie is trash, and I'm like, only this part of the movie is trash. So like, that's what makes us different here.
So we have to clap, we have to applaud, because that thing that we recognize from the games is on the big screen. We did it, guys. We are so back. Peak Fiction. It doesn't matter if they changed practically everything about Maria's character. She's there, guys. She's there. We saw Maria, and she died. Oh my god, they did it, guys. It's I cannot. Like, why are we settling for less? Like, I need to say this. I could give a shit if Gerald Robotnik is in this movie. I don't care. I could care less if we have Maria or Shadow or Knuckles or Tails. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about seeing stuff from the games make its way into the movies. Who cares? What I care about is having the essence and the heart that made those original stories so special to be present here. I don't care if a Sonic story has all my fan favorite characters. I literally, whatever. I just want the story to be good. I just want the themes and the whimsy and what made the franchise so unique and appealing to just remain intact and be present. That's all I care about. But you see, it's like what Jebzone said in his Fan Tears video that I just cannot get out of my head, that I think is so interesting and sums up this fandom to a T. People aren't fans of Sonic the Hedgehog. They're fans of being fans of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, this is condescending and bad faith, just to be clear. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm going to end the video here as it's just getting to a point where, well, you just can't. You just can't keep going, because this is literally a fundamentally bad faith way to interpret the entire movie. Okay, it's literally just bad faith to a T. No sympathy, no anything. It's just bad faith in this all the way through, all the way throughout. There's no value here. We're gonna leave it at that. And remember, I'm going to still be watching his videos because we fundamentally disagree. Okay, I need to listen to people I disagree with so I get other perspectives. But like, making a video about why I disagree is very, very, very important, because I have my own thoughts and I need to express them in some way. So if you guys want to be a part of that, like, sub, or whatever, and have a good day.
Sleepy, happy, Doc, grumpy, bashful, and Tyrone. I never save a black bitch's number in my phone. It's the Mambo King, Xavier Cougat. Call me Mario, nigga, cause I'm wearing my coon hat. Some of my best friends are black, but they say I'm fucking racist. Homie, I ain't the one who put your ass on a slave ship.